Hello everyone, good morning, and I hope your day is going well. Have you heard of Five Nights at Freddy's sister location? I was reminded of it recently when a number of videos started popping up critiquing it. My feelings on the game itself were pretty sparse, but I did have a very distinct memory of developing an opinion on one character in particular. See, when I was the tender young age of in high school, I watched quite a bit of game theory. And in one of his old FNAF videos, don't ask me which one, that playlist is a mile long and I am not prepared to go through it, our friend Matthias Patterson makes a joke about Ballora and Balloon Boy not having any fans. You'd be surprised how much spite you can summon from a high schooler with just one sentence. I think up until that point, I'd only had a vague appreciation for the dancer aesthetic, but with that one sentence, I determined that Ballora was my favorite of all time, and nothing anyone said could sway me from that. This didn't have any effect on my life because I didn't really talk to anyone about my interests, but seeing all these retrospectives made me reconsider. My appreciation started from a place of defiance, but I felt like I genuinely did like her the most out of all of the Funtime animatronics. So I decided to do a little digging and figure out why. So I started writing a video about why I liked Ballora, and in the spirit of academic honesty, I decided to play Sister Location. I mean, it'd be pretty dumb of me to try and make a video about Ballora when I didn't play the game she was from. And, of course, to the surprise of no one except me, I developed opinions when I played this video game. And unfortunately, not all of them are positive. By the time I finished with the base nights, I had so many different things I wanted to talk about that I knew I had to expand the scope of this video. So this is no longer just Ballora is cool, and here's why. I think if Ballora had been better utilized in Sister Location, we would have gotten a game with a much stronger story. And on top of this more interesting story, we could build ourselves a more interesting gameplay experience as well. To explain what I mean, there's going to be a bit of preamble. I want to go over the game as it currently stands so that we can better understand the changes that I'm proposing and how they would improve the overall experience. There's quite a bit we have to go over, so let's not waste any more time. Grab a snack, get comfortable, make sure to have water handy. It's time for us to have a little chat about Sister Location. Sister Location was an incredibly popular game when it first released, and still is today for quite a few reasons. It came directly after FNAF World, which was pretty universally canned and despised by the community, so even though its gameplay is almost nothing like the other games in the series, it was enough not like FNAF World and enough like the previous ones for people to kind of embrace it. In addition to this, it had a much greater focus on lore than the previous games did. Well, that's not entirely true. All of the FNAF games have had their secrets and stories to tell, but Sister Location was the first FNAF game that I think really tried to be clear about what was going on. And in a series where clues for what's happening are usually given with randomly appearing newspaper articles and mini-games you get by punching the wall a bunch of times, I think the transparency was appreciated. On top of that, the animatronics actually talk to you in this game. Dialogue wasn't anything new in the FNAF series, RIP phone guy, but dialogue from the monsters trying to kill you? Pretty new concept and very intriguing for the time. Of course, hindsight is 2020. This game and its transparency had a massive impact on the franchise going forward that has really started to come under scrutiny, especially recently as people have been trying to make sense of all the retcons and complications introduced by Security Breach. I've heard it said that this game is where the FNAF lore started to really go off the rails, and while I can't disagree with that statement, I also need to be honest and say that I'm kind of a fan of one of this game's most divisive concepts, that being Michael Afton's death and not death. Yes, getting your insides scooped out so a bundle of wires can puppet you around sounds ridiculous when you say it verbatim, and it's kind of a different genre than the original angry child ghosts or haunting stuff, but the idea of getting killed in such a violent, grotesque manner, only to realize after the fact that you can never truly die and you're trapped in your own steadily rotting body, is a viscerally disturbing concept that I wish had been explored more in some fashion, We make jokes about Michael Afton being a zombie and getting fired due to odor, but that is a legitimately existentially terrifying existence that really intrigues me to think about. And Michael having enough of a sense of humor after all that to draw himself killing Freddy Fazbear with laser eyes? It's great! I love it! I can really get into a character like that. Of course, this one really cool concept that I like comes with everything else in the game. I said that people liked this lore for being clear, but I think people also disliked it for how strange people found it. I'm alright with Remnant existing as goofy goo that might be the byproduct of spirits but might also be the thing that keeps them around because, again, it gives us the opportunity to contemplate Michael Afton's horrifying continued existence, but it's an attempt to science-ify something that was for a long time mysterious and unexplainable, and that didn't really need an explanation. When a story decides to retroactively make supernatural events explainable by science, it can sometimes feel like the narrative is insecure in its existence, and I tend to check out a bit. So from a meta perspective, I don't really like what Sister Location did to the overall lore of the games. It leans a bit too sci-fi for me. But I'm very attached to this one specific concept, so I don't feel comfortable saying I despise the lore of Sister Location altogether. Overall, the lore this game introduced was exciting and new when it came out, and has slowly become more divisive as time has passed. Some people love it, some people hate it, some people chop it into bits and only take the pieces they like. But these are opinions you can form without technically ever actually playing the game. Regardless of how you feel about the lore and story of Sister Location, it is still a game, so the experience someone has while playing it should be taken into account when talking about it. As mentioned in the intro, I have now played the game, and I have to say I wasn't terribly impressed with the experience I had. I think if I'd been playing this game blind, I probably would have liked it a bit more. It has some scripted scares that might get you the first time around, and the novelty of the character dialogue is pretty potent. But Sister Location came out nearly 7 years ago, and I watched Markiplier pretty religiously back then, so this game didn't really have anything it could surprise me with. A game can still be engaging even if you know what's coming, but in the case of Sister Location, I don't think the core gameplay is fun enough for that to be the case. I'm going to be going through each night and what I liked and disliked about them. Others have gone into much greater detail on all of these nights, so even though I think it's important to make my own thoughts clear, I'm going to try and be efficient in the way I talk so I don't sound too redundant. Let's get going, and hopefully we can get through this as cleanly and painlessly as possible. Night 1 is never really that bad in any of the games, and Sister Location is no exception. You can't die in Night 1, and it really just serves as an introduction to the location and tone. You check on various animatronics and get a sense of the location and where you'll be going in future nights. It's just an introduction, so I'm not about to get up in arms about it. It's fine for what it's trying to be. One thing I was disappointed in was how infrequently the controlled shock mechanic is used in the overall game. As I said, Night 1 is meant to act as a tutorial for the rest of the game, but the controlled shock is never used to ward off animatronics, so it feels like a bit of wasted potential. It's used very sparingly to build up some tension at the beginning of nights, and I feel like it could have been used for some much cooler stuff. Instead, it just feels like a throwaway plot device for revealing creepy stuff later. Night 2 is probably the best night in the game, since a lot happens in it and there's a lot of variety in all the tasks you're given. After you check on Ballora and Funtime Foxy, you're told to check on Baby when a power malfunction occurs. From here you need to hide under a desk from Biddy Babs, get across Ballora Gallery, and reset the power in parts of the building while avoiding dying to Funtime Freddy. The Biddy Babs minigame was pretty easy to me, and I feel like there could have been more to it. Like, instead of Baby telling you to avoid eye contact, you need to shine the light in their eyes to scare them away. Or something like that, I don't know. I'll be honest, I'm not sure why a lot of Let's Players I watched had trouble with it. I think maybe they thought you had to click and drag repeatedly to move the cover rather than just holding down the mouse. I'm not sure. Maybe it used to be harder, who knows. Sneaking through Ballora Gallery is less a minigame and more a transition phase with an extra challenge on top, but I still like it. I had fun with the listening mechanic, and the music helped the mostly black screen to have some interest instead of just being nothing. Funtime Freddy's minigame is probably my favorite in the whole game. Once you reach the maintenance room, you need to flip up a monitor and hold down a button to slowly reset power in different areas of the facility. When you have the monitor up, Funtime Freddy will try and get close enough to kill you, so you need to periodically exit the panel to play a voice line from his Bonnie hand puppet to gaslight him into thinking you're not there. I think this minigame does a very good job building tension. Forcing the player to look away from the threat is a good way of building fear and suspense, and because of that dread at the possibility of dying, you just want the section to be over, so it's very easy to get greedy and try and get the percentage just a little higher before you check on Freddy again. But this sort of greed is punished swiftly and with prejudice in the form of death via a very well done jump scare. As long as you're patient, I think this minigame presents a fair and fun challenge, one that only took me a couple of tries to beat. It never felt unfair to me because every time I died it was because I tried to push my luck too far, and I felt like I got closer with each attempt. Once you manage to reset power, you go back across the Ballora Gallery to get home. Ballora has some dialogue here, but you can't die, so you can rush through if you really want it to be done. Thus ends Night 2, the night with arguably the most diverse gameplay, and definitely the one I enjoyed the most. Night 3 was a bit frustrating for me. On this night, you need to go through Funtime Auditorium, Funtime Foxy's area, to get to another maintenance room where you do some work on Funtime Freddy. Funtime Foxy's mechanic is a bit like Ballora's, but worse. As you go through the gallery, you need to occasionally flash a light you're given to see if Foxy is in front of you. If he is, you wait until he moves out of the way so you can keep walking. Unlike the Ballora section, the only audio is the flash beacon sound effect and the scuffling noises of Foxy moving around, so there really isn't anything to distract you from the fact that you're just staring at a black screen. You can only briefly see glimpses of the room and Foxy when you decide to flash your light, and it's not very entertaining. I think this would have been a good opportunity to implement the shocking mechanic. Like, instead of just waiting for Funtime Foxy to shuffle out of the way, you instead have to use some sort of taser to make him move before continuing, with the caveat that using it too often makes him angry, or something of that sort. An extra mechanic like that could have helped this section be a bit more engaging, since, as it is, it's pretty lackluster. The Funtime Freddy minigame is where the true annoyance begins. You're tasked with removing Funtime Freddy's power module, doing this by pressing buttons in a certain sequence and just taking it out. This isn't difficult to do, and the suddenness of the outer shell opening is a good jump scare the first time you see it. But then you need to remove the secondary power module from the Bonnie hand puppet, which has conveniently decided to go for a stroll. Once you find him, you sneakily get close before clicking his bow tie. It sounds simple on paper, but I had so much trouble with this for what felt like entirely arbitrary reasons. In most of my attempts at this part of the night, I don't think I even saw Bonnie before he killed me. Apparently, there's a trick you can do to make Bonnie spawn in a specific location every time, but I didn't know that trick going in, so as far as I was concerned, I was losing this section over and over again because the game decided that I deserved to have a bad day. And if you take too long to find Bonnie, who is refusing to appear, you die and have to do everything over again. All of Funtime Auditorium and all of Funtime Freddy maintenance just to get a chance to try this 2-minute section again. It didn't feel like a challenge I was slowly understanding and getting better at. Every time I lost, it felt like I'd been cheated, because seriously, how on earth do you get this guy to spawn naturally? I'm not going to exaggerate and say this took me hours, but I was very tired of it by the time Bonnie sat still long enough for me to hit the button, which probably isn't the best mindset to have when going into Night 4 of this game. The start of Night 4 is pretty unconventional compared to others in the series and even in its own game. On our way out of Funtime Auditorium on Night 3, the player is jump scared by Funtime Foxy. This initially seems like a normal death, but as some dialogue plays and we wake up inside of some sort of suit, we realize that this is Night 4 of the game. It's a neat idea, and it definitely intrigued people when it was first seen that this was the fourth night. But the gameplay itself? Yeah, it's not good. And I want to be clear, I didn't go into this wanting to feel bad about it. I was actually kind of hoping I could defy this night's reputation and have fun with it even if it took me forever to beat. But watching someone else play this doesn't truly convey the absolute slog it is to get through. I did not enjoy this night. I couldn't make myself enjoy this night, and believe me, I tried. In total, it took me a little over 3 hours to beat. And yes, in the grand expanse of the universe, that isn't very much time, but it's so stale and nothing when you play it. You only need to survive for 3 minutes, but it feels like ages. Nothing is happening except the ticking of the spring locks and your own rapidly deteriorating thoughts, and at some point I stopped feeling frustrated and just started to feel empty. Because of my life schedule, trying to beat this night didn't happen in one sitting. This means that this video took an absolute age to make, because while trying to beat Night 4, I had to basically gaslight myself into doing another attempt because my dopamine-deficient, ADHD-addled brain had come to the correct conclusion that doing literally anything else would be more fun. I did eventually beat the night, but it didn't feel worth it at all. I'd been at it so long by that point that when the night finally ended, I just felt kind of numb. Now that a while has passed, I do feel a bit of melancholic pride that I was able to do it, but that's not enough to make the whole experience worthwhile. Which honestly makes me a bit sad because I can understand why this night came to be and even kind of what it was trying to do. Springlock suits are an interesting concept, and we've seen spring traps, so we know how dangerous they can be for someone. It makes perfect sense for Scott to try and utilize that terror, and on paper, being trapped in a springlock suit and needing to somehow ward off enemies at the same time sounds really cool. But as potentially harrowing as that scenario would be, in this case it just didn't translate to a fun gameplay experience. I wish I had something more positive to say, but that's the truth of it. Even if you're a based pro gamer who completed it on your first try, the only thing you got was a very bloated monologue and 3 minutes of clicking noises. I have no desire to play this night again, and there's only so many ways I can say, this is bad and I don't like it, so I think it's time to move on. Goodbye, Night 4. I won't miss you. Night 5 is kind of a weird one for me. It took me so long to beat Night 4 that when I did, for a second I forgot there even was a fifth night. And once that second was over, I really wasn't too jazzed about sticking with this game. I did my best to go into it with a good attitude, but Night 4 really knocked the wind out of me. So though I did complete this night, it was more out of obligation than personal desire. You're told that you need to do some maintenance on Baby, so you travel across the Funtime auditorium again to get to the maintenance room. It's pretty easy to do since this room is now empty because story reasons, although I wish this was communicated in some way, because I can imagine someone playing this blind wasting a lot of time hiding from a threat that isn't there. Once you get to the other side, hand unit's instructions get overridden by Baby, and you need to do a keypad minigame before following her instructions to the auditorium so you can get your organs scooped out. Spoilers, by the way. The keypad minigame is very strange, and I don't like it at all. Within the context of the game, it feels strangely arbitrary. Supposedly we need this chip so that Baby can keep talking to us in the auditorium, but she's been talking to us just fine throughout the whole game. Couldn't she just have used the loudspeakers like Hand Unit did earlier in Ballora Gallery? Maybe there's an in-universe story reason that Baby is lying and you need the chip to do some such at some other time, but I haven't seen the FNAF video, so as it is, this minigame just feels like padding to make a night with sparse gameplay slightly longer. I might not mind it as much if this minigame was easy to get through, but I had a surprisingly hard time with it. Some of that can be put down to skill issue, but there are also times that I'm sure I pressed the right button, but died immediately.
8, 3, 6.
Maybe I was going too slow, or maybe the cursor was weird and wasn't actually clicking what I thought. I'm really not sure, and it bothers me that I can't be sure, because then I had no idea what I needed to change in the next attempt. Remember how I said you had to travel across an empty Funtime auditorium to do maintenance on Baby? Every time you die, you need to do that again. It's not a super long run, but if you're doing multiple attempts at this keypad, it gets pretty annoying pretty fast. And again, if you're playing this blind and you don't know that Foxy isn't there, it takes even longer and gets even more annoying. Also, I think it's a bit unfair that the minigame that specifically tells you to enter the code carefully kills you if you're too slow. Like, sorry it took me a millisecond longer than you wanted. Next time I'll just smash my face against the keypad, make it faster for both of us. The one thing I'll say is cool about the keypad is that you can faintly see Ennard in the background, even after Baby is taken away at the end. That's pretty neat. Anyway, back to Salt. Baby's instructions in the gallery. She tells you to go forward and left, which I interpreted as go forward a few steps and then also start going left. Apparently, you're supposed to just hold A and W at the same time to go in the direction she wants. This tiny mistake killed me at least 3 times, and yes, I did want to chew my own hands off when I found out what I was doing wrong. The ending cutscene is kind of cool, but the tension of it is kind of overshadowed by logic. Like, my man Michael just sits there and lets himself die. I could 100% contrive a reason for this. One of the maintenance workers mentions that it's all automated when talking about the scooper, so maybe we can then infer that whatever ends up in that spot is automatically secured. Or maybe Michael is so racked with guilt as a character that he thinks he deserves to die and lets it happen. But both of these explanations are kind of stretching it, and as much as I like the idea of a character dying and being forced to continue on completely aware that they shouldn't be alive, the scooper as a design is just not intimidating. It's a snow shovel taped to a moving arm. I've seen toy excavators that look more dangerous. It doesn't even look sharp. Michael should probably worry more about being crushed than having his inside scooped out. But I digress. The non-canon ending exists and uses a gameplay style much more reminiscent of earlier games in the franchise, but I know it would take me literal days of grinding to get even close to beating it, especially since after every failed attempt you need to sprint across Funtime Auditorium and do the keypad minigame again just to get another shot. So even though I beat the Baby minigame and I could technically give it a try, I don't have the time or inclination in my life right now. All in all, I did not find Sister Location to be a fun game. If you played it and you had a great time, I'm really happy you did. I wish I could say the same. But I have to be honest and say that the most fun I had playing Sister Location was when I was bouncing to the music or playing this circle click the nose game I made up. So, make of that what you will. The next thing we'll be talking about more in depth is characters. As excited as I am to talk about these guys, I will admit that what we have in game is kind of bare bones. The character design sparked a lot of excitement and speculation, for good reason in some cases, but as far as personality and motivation, these guys are kind of thin on the ground. But hey, I've done much more with much less, so let's see what kind of cake we can make out of all these crumbs. Funtime Freddy and Foxy definitely suffer the worst from bare bones character syndrome, which is why I'm lumping them together. Tell me which is worse, getting no voice lines in the entire game, or literally living in a supply closet while everyone else gets some kind of show stage. Seriously, what do you guys think? Because personally, I think it's the first one. Yes, Funtime Foxy was eventually given a voice in Ultimate Custom Night, but that voice is nowhere in this game, so I'm not counting it. Because I guess having the Biddy Babs whispering threateningly was much more important than getting a voice for a version of one of the most popular characters in the franchise. Then again, having your face on the cover of the game but not even getting a stage to stand on probably stings pretty bad too. Let me know in the comments which of these guys was thrown under a bigger bus. Again, my money's on Foxy, but I'm willing to talk about it. As far as character design, I like both of these guys. I wouldn't consider either of them my favorite, but they're nice enough. I do think Freddy stands a bit above Foxy thanks to the Bonnie hand puppet, which gives Freddy some more variety than just a different color and smooth now. Of course, this has the consequence of Bonnie not really being a character at all. Freddy and Foxy don't have a lot going on, but Bonnie didn't even get a color palette switch, which is a bit sad. Although he does get his hilarious moment in the spotlight when Freddy chucks him at you in the custom night. My only sadness about not beating the secret night is that I didn't get to witness that firsthand. As for nighttime mechanics, I'll just reiterate them quickly. Funtime Freddy has what I think is the best minigame, which feels tense and challenging without it being unfair or impossible. I can't speak very highly of his second minigame, which frustrated me a lot, but I'm willing to blame that one on Bonnie. The little guy might not have a character, but he definitely knows how to make a nuisance of himself. Foxy's minigame is bare bones, to put it generously, and unlike Funtime Freddy, Foxy doesn't have Kellen Goff's excellent voice acting to elevate his performance. Most of it is just a black screen, with occasional flashes of a room that just doesn't have much going on. Again, I would have loved to see the controlled shock be incorporated here in some way. It makes sense for it not to be used with Freddy since he has no stage to go back onto, but I feel like it really could have worked for Foxy. When it comes to actual character and motivation, Foxy is once again taking an L. Most of the personality of these animatronics is conveyed through voice lines, of which Foxy has a very disheartening none whatsoever. Once again, I'm aware they have lines in Ultimate Custom Night, but we're talking about Sister Location here, and they just have nothing to offer in this game. If the kidnapping was Funtime Foxy's idea, that could be a point in their direction, but there's nothing to substantiate that headcanon, so I must sadly report that Foxy doesn't have a lot going on in this game. It's okay, buddy. You tried. I think. Freddy, on the other hand, is full of personality, perhaps to a concerning degree. All of his voice lines are very effective in communicating that Funtime Freddy is enthusiastic, gleeful, and very much unhinged. He perfectly channels the energy of that one clown your parents hired for your birthday party that made you cry in terror, but your parents paid good money to have him there, so they insisted on taking a photo of you in his lap even though you were scared out of your mind and sobbing the entire time. He doesn't give me the impression that he's trying to kill you because he's angry, he's just getting a kick out of trying to murder you. Which is fitting for what he is and makes for a very memorable character, so even though he doesn't do much story-wise, I still like him quite a bit. Speaking of characters I like, let's talk about the one that got this whole video to be made in the first place. Yes, everyone, at long last, we're talking about Ballora. We finally get to start talking about the character showcased in the thumbnail. Praise and hallelujah! She is unfortunately another casualty of bare bones disease, but there are things to appreciate here. I like her for her aesthetic, as well as the fact that she just feels different from the other animatronics. In a sea of animatronics that maniacally laugh and taunt you, Ballora stands out as being particularly reserved in comparison, which makes it all the more jarring when she turns out to be just as murder-happy as everyone else. One thing I love about her design is how she keeps her eyes closed right up until she kills you. When she's just standing there with her eyes shut, she seems calm, almost placid, but one look at her jump scare reveals the ghoulish nature hiding beneath. It's such a cool aesthetic, and it stands out to me more than pretty much any character in the series. I will admit that what little gameplay she has is pretty similar to Funtime Foxy, but I don't find myself as annoyed by it as Foxy's. Maybe it's just because it was earlier in the game and I hadn't really gotten tired of Sister Location yet, or maybe it's just that I didn't have to redo it a bunch of times, but I think it works well. I really wish there was more of it, or more of Ballora in general, but it's perfectly serviceable, and it's on the way back from this gallery that we get to hear Ballora's voice lines. I'm honestly a little unsure of how we're meant to interpret these voice lines. Is she legitimately convinced that there's nothing there, or did she just decide to let us go this time? These are the only voice lines she has in the game, so we really can't be sure. There's apparently also a song that Ballora sings in-game, but I couldn't hear it at all when I was playing, and I'm not about to be digging through the game files for it. So we unfortunately don't have a lot on her when it comes to personal motivation for trying to kill you. She does play a role in a later night, Night 4, where she serves as a live demonstration of how the scooper works, but they don't really use this night to tell us anything more about her character. It's less than I would have hoped for in the base game, but hey, this whole video is about how she was underutilized, so I guess it's fitting that she doesn't have a lot of lines. We'll just have to wait till the changes section to see how she could have been expanded upon. And the last character we'll be looking at today is Baby, the big bad of Sister Location. There isn't much to go over for gameplay since her one minigame is the keypad, so I think let's just move on to the character bits. Baby is the ultimate mastermind in Sister Location. She uses cunning and charm to effectively trick the player into doing what she wants, only to pull the rug out from under them at the last minute in a pretty shocking twist. Is what I would say if any of that was true. See, Baby has the most dialogue out of any character in the game by a pretty significant margin, and it gives us a much clearer picture of her than we can get of anyone else. And it's incredibly clear to me that Baby thinks she's some kind of mastermind. She thinks she's clever and cunning and the puppet master pulling all the strings, but in reality, when you pull back the curtain and really look at what actually happens, it's a miracle that Baby's plan had any form of success. Baby has this entire speech claiming that she's the only one who knows how to pretend, but I have a pretty hard time believing her. For all her talking, Baby doesn't actually do much in the game, and the things that she does do don't make a lot of sense when you remember her intended objective. There is absolutely no reason for her to admit to kidnapping you on Night 4. First of all, Baby, no you didn't. Funtime Foxy is the one who jump scared us, so they clearly did all the work. And second of all, why would you claim responsibility anyway? It would have been much easier and more in line with Baby's motivations for her to blame the entire incident on them. And why did she even decide to kidnap you in the first place? Her decision to do this destroys any chance of thinking of her as a good guy, and Michael was already coming back each night very consistently, so I have no idea why she felt the need to do this. Even if you don't guess that a complete betrayal is coming on the next night, this kidnapping clearly establishes to the player that Baby is willing and ready to hurt you, basically eliminating any uncertainty about how we're meant to think of her. The only reason Baby's plan succeeds after this is because Michael's sense of preservation died along with his siblings. Literally anyone else would have run for the hills at this point. Later in the keypad minigame, she claims she needs to be careful not to move. It makes total sense for her to be lying at this point, so I'm not surprised that the suit we're working on is literally empty already, but I do want to point out that she can't manage to stay still even then. On top of just not being good at manipulation, Baby also seems to be a generally unpleasant person to be around, seeing as how she got booted from Ennard sometime after Sister Location's events for being bossy and annoying. I've heard some say that it's because the animatronics disagreed with her trying to help William or something, but that's not it. Looking at the dialogue, she got kicked out because she was crowding them and trying to tell them what to do. It wasn't because of some ideological difference, they just thought she was annoying and bossy and they weren't gonna stand for it anymore. And then, in Pizzeria Simulator, she has the audacity to act like some sort of authority and speak for the others when she was literally kicked out of the only group that could have possibly understood her. Absolutely incredible. Sorry, I realize that was a lot and I'm really going after Baby here, but I'm seriously just so sick of her attitude. She acts like she's genius incarnate, but literally does nothing but talk to you the entire game. It's possible that the reason she only speaks to you and doesn't do anything else all game is because she's already part of Ennard at the start, and so she literally can't show up face to face, but that just makes the stunt on Night 4 even worse. No matter how you look at it, Baby is an idiot for no reason. If she just decided to kidnap Michael for funsies, then she's going against everything she's pretending to be. And if Funtime Foxy did it for funsies and Baby decided to take credit for that, then she has worms for brains, because why would you do that if you're pretending to be nice? And after this night, she goes right back to being soft-spoken and kind and trying to trick you. It's just such a strange moment that I don't understand the logic for, and it's so out of left field she almost seems like a completely different character. In fact, I think Night 4 and this whole game could be improved if the one kidnapping you was a different character. I think the one to orchestrate your kidnapping on Night 4 should not have been Baby. It should have been Ballora. As I stated in Ballora's character section earlier, Ballora really should have had more going on. She just feels so different from the other animatronics we've seen, but we only get one tiny section with her and that's it, when that uniqueness could really have been used in an interesting manner. Ballora's aesthetic and general vibes fit the whispering temptress archetype much better than Baby does, where Baby is meant to be the star of the show, loud and proud and literally holding a microphone. Ballora is the one in the background, just listening and waiting. She would be the prime character to hear everything, and she's poised and held back enough to wait for just the right time to use that knowledge. Imagine with me for a moment that after you're taken on Night 4, instead of hearing a very long and ultimately pointless speech about pretending, you're instead greeted by the voice of Ballora. At this point in the game, Baby has been talking to you for a good long while. You know her, and even if you don't trust her, she's still becoming a very familiar presence. Ballora, though? Ballora has spoken only once so far, directly after a somewhat difficult minigame where you're just trying to get home. Ballora is a complete unknown here, and that's much scarier than the voice that's been giving you helpful instructions this entire game. Remember how I mentioned earlier that I was unsure how to interpret Ballora's dialogue? That I didn't know if it was intended to be her letting us get away or that she genuinely didn't see us? Having her do this would be a natural follow-up to an interpretation of that dialogue. She allows you to get away on Night 2, but makes arrangements to have you kidnapped the very next night. And once she has you there, she could taunt you, asking you if you really know what's going on here, which makes for much subtler foreshadowing than Baby literally bragging about how good at lying she is. From there, she could do the same thing Baby does, be ominously curious about us before talking about what the scooper is, which would make it 10 times more jarring when she gets her insides ripped out and splayed across the floor right in front of us. Like, she was talking to us just a second ago and now she's in pieces. And right near the end, maybe Baby could swoop in with extra information to get you through the night. When faced with the very actively threatening Ballora and the ominous but has always been helpful Baby, it would give players an actual reason to trust Baby and feel betrayed on Night 5. There's a lot of interesting character things you can do with this sort of setup. Maybe Ballora is angry because she knows what's about to happen to her, and after she's scooped, her insides add another layer of macabre to the night as they keep twitching and slithering around. Even just having her laugh as you're trying to survive would be more interesting than the constant ticking happening. Maybe she could mess with the PA system to make it harder for Baby to talk to you. Maybe we only have one arm in the springlock suit and we need to use the other to shine a flashlight in her eyes, forcing her to back off until we can get the springlocks under control. Maybe none of these ideas would work out, but having Ballora as the threat on Night 4 would have been much more impactful than just a bunch of no-name mini-renas skittering around. But one thing you might be asking is, why? Why would Ballora want to kidnap the player in this proposed scenario? To be honest, you can give her pretty much any motivation and it would make more sense than Baby deciding to do it. Maybe she's curious about the player and why they continue to work there despite the danger. Maybe she's fed up with the mistreatment of this place and you're a convenient person she can take this out on. I think both of these motivations would contribute and be interesting, but I think the main reason Ballora would decide to do this would be to spite Baby. Something I haven't mentioned up until now is that if you look at the dialogue, Baby seems weirdly antagonistic towards Ballora. It seems like she takes pretty much every opportunity to be petty towards her. Like, in the Night 4 pretending speech, she puts great emphasis on the fact that Ballora never learns, and that's why she's getting scooped today. Within the context of the scene, it just feels kinda weird. Like, dang Baby, Ballora hasn't said anything to you, why are you going after her like that? If it was just this one time, I think I could dismiss it, but this sort of thing happens a lot. Like, at the end of Night 5, when we're about to enter the scooping room, and Baby puts special emphasis on Ballora being afraid of the scooping room. Even the fact that it's supposedly Ballora stalking you through Funtime Auditorium is weird. Why didn't Baby say you were being stalked by, I don't know, Funtime Foxy? We are literally in the Funtime Auditorium. Ballora doesn't even go here. Yes, there is a way to get to the scooping room from the auditorium, and likely vice versa, but the player isn't meant to know about this on a first playthrough. So Baby choosing Ballora as the threat doesn't make sense if she's trying to convince you that things are normal. And within the universe, Michael wouldn't know about this vent either, since he always leaves through the actual entrance and hand unit says that he's not supposed to be there. Within the context of the in-game universe, it makes about as much sense as her warning the player to watch out for Funtime Freddy, who, friendly reminder, lives in a closet on the other side of the building. You could claim that Baby used Ballora as the threat because her scooped remains might explain Ennard's appearance if the player saw them, but that would imply that Canon Baby thinks things through. I kidnapped you. Which I think we've established is not something she's skilled at. It really just feels like Baby is taking every opportunity she can to undercut Ballora and make her look bad. It's just another weird thing in Sister Location that exists but is never expanded upon, which is sad for the main game but very useful for a reimagining. Ballora doesn't get enough dialogue for us to see if she feels a similar disdain for Baby, but we do know that the Funtimes later kick Baby out of the Cool Kids Club on account of her bad vibes and generally rancid attitude. So I think it's safe to assume that in our rework of events, Ballora would pick up on the passive aggressiveness and have a little bit of her own in return. Although the two of them are technically working towards a mutual goal of freedom, there is absolutely precedent for this interpersonal tension to be there. Animatronics working against each other isn't something we've really seen in the franchise except for maybe Security Breach. This conflict would have been interesting to explore and see play out, and it would have foreshadowed the eventual splitting up of Baby and the others, which is something that just sort of happens off-screen between Sister Location and Pizzeria Simulator. Having the animatronics already griping with each other in this game would have made the eventual split feel more like a, yeah, that makes sense, instead of a, oh, I guess that happened at some point. I imagine it goes something like this. Baby has proposed the bunch of animatronics in a human trenchcoat plan to the Funtimes. They agree, but they don't really like how much she's tooting her own horn about it. Ballora, in particular, resents how much Baby is ragging on her, so she sets up a little plot of her own, kidnapping the night guard Baby has slowly been winning over and putting him in a terrifying and dangerous situation. And when Baby arrives, royally ticked off that Ballora has decided to do this, she can't truly yell at Ballora because Michael is literally right there, and it would go against her good guy persona to blurt all that out loud. Ballora would of course know this and planned for it to be that way, and she's thoroughly enjoying watching Baby seethe, while some of her other emotions about the situation leak through. From a player perspective, it would at first seem like Baby is desperately begging a friend to see reason, but on a second playthrough you realize that Baby is just mad that Ballora didn't fall in line, and the tenseness of the situation is causing some actual anger and disgust to bleed through Ballora's smugness. And with this interpersonal conflict going on, it would make sense for Ballora to be the one threatening you in Night 5, since she's established herself as someone who wants you dead and is very willing to make the journey across the hall to make it happen. So, to recap, having Ballora as your kidnapper on Night 4 strengthens the story by a pretty significant margin. Not only does it make both characters more interesting and sensible, it increases the intrigue and horror factor and foreshadows the later splitting up of the Funtimes. All in all, it's a fairly simple change that would be implemented mostly through dialogue, with maybe a few new PNGs if you're feeling fancy. What I talk about next won't be quite as straightforward. Throughout the video so far, I've really been making an effort to only talk about changes that could have been implemented at the time Sister Location was being made. Just tweaks mostly in story that could have been added to make the game more intriguing and sensible. It's in this section that things get much more speculative, because I'm going to be talking about different gameplay ideas as well as different story ideas. I'm keeping the basic framework of Baby versus Ballora because it's an interesting character dynamic that gives us a good foundation for drama and intrigue, and it foreshadows what happens to the Funtimes later. But the gameplay restructuring I'm proposing is one that would require a complete overhaul of the game, and it is much more work than just giving the voice actors a new script. Please bear with me, this is my time to throw spaghetti at a wall, and I have no idea what's gonna stick. My thought for a complete gameplay refiguring would involve changing the night guard from part-time to full-time. Rather than working 12 to 6, the hours are now 10 to 6. The extra 2 hours would be dedicated to animatronic repair and maintenance. The YouTuber Yeah mentioned an idea similar to this in his own video, suggesting that a player be given limited time to do tasks and only enough time to do some. I think that's a great idea, and one that could easily be integrated into this 8-hour night that I'm proposing. Whether or not it's timed, the point is that from 10 to midnight, the player is doing various mini-games with the Funtimes, similar to the ones we get in base game. Once 12 o'clock hits, the night guard must go to the safe room in Funtime Auditorium. The rest of the night plays out like a night in most FNAF games. You must fend off animatronics for 6 hours while preserving power and trying desperately not to die. But there's a bit of a twist. At the start of each night's office section, Hand Unit would give you the instructions on how to fend off the animatronics. And, just like in the original sister location, Baby would come in afterwards to give you the real rundown on how to survive. For example, in the custom night of sister location, Funtime Freddy's mechanic is that, if he says, "Ready or not, here I come," you close the door on the side with that audio. Whereas if he says, "Get ready for a surprise," you close the door opposite that sound. Hand Unit could give you that first piece of information, while Baby is the one to fully explain the surprise part of Freddy's mechanic. As I stated before, I didn't play Custom Night, so I can't speak for its quality, but the fact is that these assets exist, making me confident that something like this could exist and work fairly well. I think the player should still have to physically walk out after completing each shift. After having just completed a classic survive the night scenario, forcing the player to leave their only place of safety in order to go home would make for some great tension. And it would still allow for the Night 4 kidnapping to occur, since even though it fell flat in the main game, I hope I've established that it's actually a pretty cool idea that would allow for some very meaty character interactions. Plus, the scripted jump scare lead-in to Night 4 would be 10 times as surprising and disorienting to the player if every other night they just walked out of there no problem. One last thing this new structure would allow for in the game would be an actual choice regarding the endings. The safe room ending in the original sister location is strangely convoluted to get. You need to complete a strange minigame and then run completely blind through the darkness, and if you actually get to the room, you're faced with a very difficult night that the game hasn't done anything to prepare you for. By contrast, this new structure of nights means that by the time Night 5 rolls around, the player is very familiar both with the mechanics and the location of the safe room. So when Baby tells you to follow her instructions in the auditorium, the player actually has a choice to make. With Baby having rescued you from Ballora just the night before, there is now a pretty good reason to trust her, at least on the surface. On the other hand, the player knows that this safe room can keep out any animatronics hunting them, and so running for it would feel like a pretty decent option as well. In this hypothetical game, following Baby's instructions would actually be a choice instead of the only route available to you, which would make her betrayal an actual slap in the face instead of just a formality. In conclusion, Sister Location is a game with some interesting ideas that it just doesn't capitalize on. This video is about Ballora specifically, and I completely stand by what I said, but there's honestly room for all of these characters to get a bit more screen time. Who knows, maybe if Funtime Foxy had gotten a voice line or two, this whole video would have been about how they should have been the kidnapper on Night 4. Up until recently, and as I was writing this video, I had resigned myself to the idea that these characters would only ever be expanded upon and appreciated in the headcanons of the community, and the Funtimes had been irrelevant to lore for so long that I didn't have much hope for even that. But then... boy oh boy howdy, it looks like some fun stuff is on the horizon. I'm not sure what Steelwool has planned for Sister Location. Maybe they'll do something similar to what I proposed, maybe they'll do something entirely different, or maybe Help Wanted will be a straight-up remake with no major changes whatsoever. Regardless of what comes of it, I'm very excited to see what's in store for these criminally underexplored characters. I hope I gave you a new appreciation, or at the very least a new perspective, on everyone's favorite spidery ballerina. I look forward to seeing what the future holds for her, and hopefully, sometime this year, we'll get to see her and the other Funtimes with a bit more depth than they were granted in their first introduction. In any event, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and I will hopefully see you all again soon. Bye!